Well, hello leaders. This is a video blog that I'm setting up to help equip you to be great leaders, not just the ones who show up for the events or go through the motions, but leaders who really lead. That's what we're after. So before we launch into the subject of this particular video blog, I just want to say that by now your house group leader should have contacted you and at least set up a time to get together and connect and pray before things start kicking off this Sunday. If not, let me know and I'll just make sure that there wasn't a breakdown in the communication line somewhere, but they have the house group lessons, they have the plan, the whole deal. So that's what's going on there. So on to the subject for today. You may remember that in our August leaders meeting, we talked about a scorecard for success. How will we know if we're doing a good job at these house groups? And among the different items on the list, like number of unsaved students present, or an increased desire for a better prayer life by leaders, one of the items on that list was that behavioral problems will need to be addressed. And the reason for that is because we have the wrong kinds of kids coming. And you're a good leader and you know that the wrong kinds of kids are the right kinds of kids. And a couple of issues sort of came to my attention at the Kalahari retreat, which some of you were on. While I was speaking on, that would have been Saturday night, we had a number of kids who got up and decided that they wanted to go roam the halls. But in addition to that, there was others who were just being disruptive and things like that. And one of our leaders, Grant, actually raised a lot of really good questions to me about, hey, what is our policy on discipline? What should I have done in that situation? And that's where it occurred to me that we really haven't been super clear about how we want to handle behavioral issues. So that's what I'm hoping to do right now. Colossians 4:6 says that our conversations should always be full of grace and seasoned with salt so that we may know how to answer everyone. And so I want to walk you through sort of a 3 strikes and you're out policy sort of for how I think that we should handle discipline, specifically as it relates to these house groups. The first thing I would say is when a behavioral issue arises, that you can call a person out publicly, but you do it gently. For example, the large group is together and there is a guy who's in the back who just keeps making these comments, left and right about people or whatever. I want you leaders to know that at all times you completely have the green light to gently just say to somebody, hey, what are you doing? Calling somebody out publicly should be done very gently. I'll give you an example. On the Sunday night session at Kalahari, Sunday afternoon session, the same sort of usual suspects were screwing around, and I had already articulated my expectations of let's take this seriously, and they were just screwing around. And I just said, fellas, come on. All I ask is that you would take this seriously. I think there's a wrong way to call somebody out publicly. And that wrong way is to silence everybody, completely stop the show and say, you guys done? Or you girls finished? Or hey, can somebody silence those people over there? That's embarrassing. I'm not sure that's full of grace or seasoned with salt. It's more of a gentle thing to help get people refocused. Like, hey girls, would you mind just putting your phones away for a little bit? Or guys, come on, seriously? Something where at least somebody is there. And really another little method, if you just see somebody who's having a tough time focused, this works with kids who are age 3 all the way up to probably 18, 19. Just go over near them. Go have a seat near them. But leaders, I want you to feel free to always know that you have the green light. You don't need to wait for anybody. There's not some protocol you need to follow. If you just sense the Spirit of God in you or there's something disturbing you, you see that something's not going quite right, just say something, but do so with a spirit of grace and do it gently. Now, let's say that those little issues that needed to be called out publicly, they just didn't stop. Now we're starting to move into a habitual pattern of behavioral problems. At this point, we would want to move from calling somebody out publicly to confronting them privately. Again, done with grace. So this might be something where you may want to defer to the house group leader, especially if you're dealing with the opposite gender. Let's say that there is one particular girl that is a problem, and you are a guy leader or the house group leader, I think that it's okay to address the members of the opposite sex. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. We're not dealing with issues that are going to require extreme secrecy. I will tell you this, I know that we're in 2012, but sometimes there is something about a girl, a female leader, disciplining a female, or a female leader disciplining a male student that for some reason just doesn't always translate well. I know it shouldn't be that way, but that's just the truth. So I would say that if you're dealing with a guy and you're a female leader who's called a guy out but he's persisting, just go talk to the house group leader and say, hey, this guy's being an issue. If it's a girl, you can talk to other girls privately. But if it's a guy, I want you to get the house group leader involved. So this is essentially strike two. Strike one was sort of calling him out gently in public. Strike two is more of, okay, let's pull him aside privately. In a house group setting, I would say the best time to do that is following the discussion at the end of the night. To pull them aside and just say, hey, you look like you had a really tough night. What's going on? What happened? It seemed like you were really distracted. You had a lot of comments to share that weren't really uplifting to people. Can you tell me what's going on? Again, let's be graceful. Let's be gentle. But what we are doing is letting this person know that we notice their behavior and that we want to find out what's going on behind it. So this is essentially strike two. But let's just say that this is now becoming not just a problem on 1 week, but it's now happening every single week, that this person is still acting up. Again, I would like for the house group leader at this point to pull the person aside, and we are going to also, once again, confront privately, but this time do so with an ultimatum, meaning this. Hey, listen, we've been noticing here that you've really been having a tough time week after week after week. So look, this is what I really want to say to you, and I want you to hear me here. We love you and we want you to be a part of this group, but if you're bringing us down, I'm going to have to ask you to take a break. So do you think that you're going to be able to handle this? Do you think you're going to be able to go forward, or do we just need to ask you to just take off for a few weeks and get your head right? So now we're setting an ultimatum here. Now it's just not in strike two, so to speak. We were saying, tell me what's going on. Let me help you. Strike three here, we're not asking any more questions. We're now saying, look, here's the ultimatum. If you cannot get it together, the next step is going to have to be to ask you to take a break. And then in that situation, if they continue to be a problem, we are going to have to ask them to stop coming, which strikes a sort of uncomfortable chord, because aren't we saying, well, the people who have behavioral issues, don't they need a house group the most? Yes, but remember this. There's just a little saying that I heard a leader say a long time ago. One for the many, never the many for the one. Meaning if there is one person who is bringing many others down, the better thing to do is not make the many suffer on the count of the one, but to remove the one so that the many can actually thrive. And if we're in a situation where we're going to need to ask somebody to stop coming, house group leaders, I'd like you to include me in that conversation. So let me give you a little bit of a recap. All leaders at all time have the green light to gently call somebody out in public, or just go over and sit next to them, whatever. You know you could always do that. If the problem persists, you confront privately. Girls, you can do this with other girls. Girls, I'd like for you to get the house group leader to do it for other guys. Guys for guys, etc. If the problem persists, we move to the strike three aspect, which is confronting privately with an ultimatum. And then if they still can't respond, we move to, I guess, strike four, which would be to ask them to take a few weeks off and get their head right and invite them back. And in that rare situation, I'd like to be involved in that as well. So there are some questions that we would need to ask ourselves, however, to make sure that part of the problem of why there are behavioral issues, we want to make sure that part of the problem isn't us. So let me give you 3 questions as a leader that you ought to be asking yourself with regards to what we're talking about here. Question number 1 is my presence part of the problem? In other words, am I boring people? Is my whole deal, my whole vibe, am I just tired, not really invested, I don't have the energy, and because my presence is so boring, kids are they're just not engaged, and that's why they're talking with each other. That's why they're on their phones. That's why they're messing around. So that's the first question that we should ask ourselves. The second question is my lack of preparation part of the problem? Whereas the first question we were asking, am I boring people? The second question we should be asking is, am I confusing people? I don't have my questions ready. I don't really know what's going on. I'm pulling that whole tired thing of like, I don't know, what does the question say? I don't know what this is supposed to be asking. That whole scene, that just communicates a lack of preparation, and that will actually push students to not take this seriously, and that could actually surface the behavioral problems. So the reality is that part of the reason why there are behavioral problems is because of the leader. The third question we should ask ourselves is, am I the one who is doing all the talking? Maybe the reason why there are behavioral problems is because kids just don't have a chance to voice their own opinions because you're the one doing all the talking. You're not asking questions, you're not leading a discussion, you're just bumping your gums, and they're not feeling it. So let's assume some personal responsibility here, because I believe this. I believe that respect is earned, not entrusted. And when we are sharing something and when we are engaging students in a lesson, it's going to cause them to lean in, and they're going to want to give their undivided attention. But if we're constantly saying, you guys need to focus, you guys need to get some attention, I don't know, maybe it's because we're just not doing a good enough job. Maybe we're not engaging enough. The other thing I would say is, let's not expect 100% silence all the time. We can't expect these kids to act like they're in school, because they're not. They're in a home and they're in a Christian community, and we want to be able to treat them in a way that's different than their teachers are going to treat them. Do we expect them to engage? Yes. But we can't expect them to sit in their little desks and be nice and clean. We want this to be a little bit conversational, don't we? And so I really don't think it's a good idea for somebody to stand up in front of a crowd and say, okay, everybody quiet, everybody shh, and that you can't even begin if one person is talking. I just don't think 100% silence is always realistic. But you know when there's somebody who's being a problem. You know when somebody's being problematic. And sometimes you just need the Spirit of God to stir in you a little bit, some discomfort, to the point where you just say, I just need to go say something or go sit next to somebody or whatever. So anyway, I hope that this is clear. If you have any questions or other ideas, please post them in the comments section below. And again, leaders, thank you so much for giving your time to be a part of these groups. So let's do it, and let's see if we can be grace-filled people when it comes to our conversations.